Welcome to Twisted Comics, your go-to YouTube channel for in-depth motion comic critique and storytelling.
This video, we will break down the 5 events when Spider-Man was pure nightmare fuel.
When you think of Spider-Man, you probably picture the friendly neighborhood hero, right? The guy swinging through New York with a constant stream of bad jokes, always ready to save the day. He's the bright, optimistic face of Marvel Comics. But what if I told you there's a side to Spider-Man's history that's less friendly neighborhood and more pure, unfiltered nightmare fuel? Beyond the movies and cartoons, tucked away in the pages of the comics, are moments of shocking body horror, deep psychological dread, and stories so twisted they'd make a slasher villain blush. Today, we're not talking about the hero who saves a cat from a tree. We're counting down 5 times Spider-Man's world became terrifying. These aren't the stories you're used to. These are the tales that might just change how you see the wall crawler forever. So let's get into it. Section 1. Number 5. Kicking off our list at number 5 is a story where our favorite hero becomes a flesh-eating monster. Marvel Zombies Return number 1. Now, many of you have probably heard of Marvel Zombies. It's an alternate reality, Earth 2149, that was decimated by a zombie plague, turning its heroes into intelligent ghouls who are constantly, ravenously hungry. The Return series picks up after the original saga, with a few of the surviving zombies, including Spider-Man, getting tossed across the multiverse. Zombie Spidey lands on a new world, Earth Z, which is a retro-style alternate universe that feels a lot like the classic comics. On this world, Gwen Stacy is alive, his friends are safe, and he has a chance to be a hero again. But there's one huge problem. The hunger is still there. It's annoying primal need for flesh that he just can't shake. His old conscience is still rattling around in his head, horrified by what he's become, and he genuinely tries to be good, but the hunger always wins. The real nightmare fuel here is in the details. In this world, his web shooters are broken. So, how does he get around the city? He fires out his own veins. The comic actually shows him shooting long, stringy tendrils of his own vascular system, glistening with blood, to swing across New York. It's a grotesque parody of his most famous ability, turning something heroic into an act of nightmarish self-mutilation. His attempt to be a hero ends in disaster. When this world's Sinister Six shows up, his resolve crumbles. The hunger takes over, and he unleashes absolute carnage, tearing through them and infecting them with the zombie virus. The worst part? The newly zombified villains immediately turn on the innocent people nearby. In a moment of absolute horror, Peter realizes he has to kill the zombified versions of people he loves to stop the plague he brought to this world. The story takes one final brutal turn. The uninfected Spider-Man of this reality is murdered by his own Sandman. After seeing the horrifying carnage, Sandman is so terrified that he kills his own Spider-Man, believing him to be a monstrous threat. So, Zombie Spidey not only fails to be a hero, but he also indirectly causes the death of his innocent counterpart, and unleashes an apocalyptic plague on a new world. It's a tragic, gory, and psychologically devastating story that proves even the best of us can become the worst monsters.
Watching till the very end, as you don't want to miss out on the best Spider-Man nightmarish events.
Section 2, number 4. For our 4th spot, we're digging up a truly unsettling tale from a 2001 series called Spider-Man's Tangled Web. This wasn't your usual superhero comic. It was an anthology that often explored the darker and weirder side of Spidey's world. And it doesn't get much darker or weirder than the story, The Coming of the Thousand. The villain here is a guy named Carl King, a pathetic bully who used to pick on Peter Parker in high school. He actually saw Peter get bitten by the radioactive spider and watched him become the amazing Spider-Man. Consumed by jealousy, he decided that power should have been his. So he did something absolutely disgusting. He went back to the science exhibit, found the spider that bit Peter, which was now dead and preserved, and he ate it. For days, nothing happened. Then, one morning, Carl's body violently turned on him. He didn't just get spider powers. His entire being was consumed and replaced. His consciousness was somehow transferred into a swarm of 1,000 spiders that now lived inside his skin, wearing his body like a suit. He had become the 1,000. This is where the story dives headfirst into body horror. The 1,000 learns it can replenish its strength by consuming people from the inside out. The spiders swarm into a victim, eat their organs and skeleton, and then pilot the empty, hollowed-out skin. The first victim? Carl King's own mother. The story implies a horrifying spree over the years, with countless victims from all walks of life, all while he nursed his obsession with Peter Parker. The horror is twofold. First, you have the abject terror of the villain itself. Imagine finding out that someone you know is just an empty skin puppet being controlled by a swarm of spiders. It's a complete violation of what it means to be human. Second, it's a deeply personal attack on Peter. The 1,000 decides it's time to take the life it thinks it was owed. It tracks down a Daily Bugle employee named Jess Patton, consumes her, and uses her skin to get close to Peter. The moment of revelation is chilling, as Jess's skin begins to stretch and contort in inhuman ways. Spiders pour from her mouth and eyes before the skin suit is discarded, revealing the chittering, writhing swarm underneath. The 1,000's goal is to do to Peter what it did to so many others, consume him from the inside out, and finally, literally, become Spider-Man. It is a monster born from a twisted reflection of Peter's own origin, a villain made of pure skin-crawling horror. We are officially in the deep end, and believe me, it only gets darker from here. If you're enjoying this look at the terrifying side of comics, make sure you're subscribed and have those notifications turned on, because you won't want to miss what's coming next. The fact that these stories even exist is wild. Now, let's get back to the list. Section 3. Number 3. At number 3, we have a moment that's infamous among fans for its shocking brutality. This isn't some alternate reality or a forgotten villain. This happened to our Peter Parker in the main Marvel Universe during the 2005 storyline, The Other, Evolve or Die. And it's the moment the villain, Morlun, yanks out and eats Spider-Man's eye. First, some context. Morlun isn't your average crook. He's a cosmic predator, an ancient being who hunts and feeds on the life force of spider-powered people across the multiverse. He was later revealed to be part of a group called the Inheritors. Think of him as a vampire for Spider-Man. He'd nearly killed Peter once before, and in this story, he's back to finish the job. Making matters worse, Peter is already dying. He's been diagnosed with a degenerative disease caused by his own radioactive blood. He's weak, having blackouts, and at his absolute lowest point. And that's exactly when Morlun chooses to strike. The fight is a complete slaughter. Spider-Man is hopelessly outmatched. Morlun just toys with him, throwing him through buildings and beating him senseless. Peter gives it one last, desperate push, but it's useless. Then comes the moment. With Peter beaten and bloody, Morlun stands over him. He's not just going to kill him. He wants to savor it. With a sickening squitch sound effect that's burned into the minds of anyone who has read it, Morlun rips Peter's left eye right out of its socket. The comic panel shows Morlun holding the bloody eyeball, optic nerve still attached, while Peter screams. And then it gets worse. Morlun pops the eye into his mouth and declares it delicious, before beating Peter's body into a pulp and leaving him for dead. This moment was shocking, because mainstream Marvel comics, especially Spider-Man, just didn't do this to their main hero. This wasn't a clone or a dream. This was Peter Parker being physically mutilated in a horrifyingly graphic way. The act of eating the eye was about total dominance and desecration. It was meant to show Peter that he wasn't just an enemy, but prey to be eaten. While Peter was eventually reborn with new powers, thanks to a mystical entity called the Other, that doesn't erase the horror of this moment. For a hero who relies on his senses, being blinded so brutally was a deep personal violation. It remains one of the most savage acts of violence ever committed against Spider-Man. Section 4, Number 2. If our last entry was about a horrifying act done to a hero, our number 2 spot is a story where the hero is the horror. Say hello to Patton Parnel from Edge of Spider-Verse number 4, who takes the classic origin story and twists it into a grotesque nightmare. This isn't Peter Parker. From the start, Patton Parnel is a deeply disturbed kid. He lives with his abusive Uncle Ted and spends his time performing cruel experiments on animals and spying on his neighbor, Sarah Jane. He isn't a good person waiting for a chance to be a hero. He's a monster waiting for an excuse. This setup is a dark mirror of Peter's origin. During a trip to Alcorp Industries, Patton is bitten by a strange, irradiated spider. But this bite is different. This spider doesn't just grant powers. It implants its eggs. The transformation isn't empowering. It's corrupting. After another beating from his uncle, Patton wakes up with a terrible, unnatural hunger. He can't eat normal food, so he eats a live mouse. Then a cat. He finds out he can produce organic webbing, but only uses it to wrap up his food. His next meal? His abusive Uncle Ted. The psychological horror here is that the powers don't make him a monster. They just give his inner monster new weapons. He fully embraces the soulless, murderous instinct that now drives him. But the real reason this story is so high on the list is the body horror. When his neighbor Sarah Jane comes looking for a missing bully, she finds Patton. He bites her on the neck. When she slaps him, it triggers his full, gruesome transformation into a monstrous spider creature with 8 limbs, compound eyes, and giant fangs. Sarah tries to run, only to discover Patton's house of horrors. The missing bully is wrapped in a cocoon, but that's not even the worst part. His Uncle Ted is tied to a bed, still alive, as a swarm of baby spiders hatches and crawls out of the flesh of his face. Patton's bite doesn't just poison. It impregnates, turning his victims into living incubators for his spawn. Just as the now full-blown man-spider professes his twisted love for Sarah, Morlun, yes, the sane Morlun arrives and quickly kills this monstrous variant. But the horror doesn't end. The final panel shows Sarah the next morning as she feels something crawling on her skin. Countless tiny spiders begin to emerge from her face. This story isn't about great power and great responsibility. It's about a disturbed mind given monstrous power, resulting in one of the most skin-crawling tales in Spider-Man history. Section 5, Number 1. We've seen zombies, spider swarms, and monstrous transformations. But the number 1 spot isn't just a single, shocking panel. It's a sustained, systematic campaign of torture that pushes Peter Parker to the absolute brink of his sanity. We're talking about the Last Remains storyline and the demonic villain known as Kindred. Kindred, who is eventually revealed to be a hell-powered version of Harry Osborn, has a deep supernatural hatred for Peter Parker. His goal isn't just to kill Spider-Man. It's just to force Peter to confront every failure and to make him suffer in a way that would make death feel like a gift. This 2020 storyline is a masterclass in psychological horror. The torment begins with Kindred digging up the graves of Peter's loved ones, including Uncle Ben and Gwen Stacy, and arranging their corpses around a dinner table. Then, Kindred uses his demonic power to possess the entire spider family Miles Morales, Ghost Spider, Silk, and others, turning Peter's closest allies against him in a brutal attack. But that's just the prelude. After capturing Peter, Kindred begins the real torture. He kills Peter over and over, only to resurrect him moments later. The story shows or implies a horrifying cycle of death. Kindred slits his throat, drowns him, shatters his spine, and in one gruesome sequence, has giant demonic centipedes crawl into his every orifice, and eat him from the inside out. This is a prolonged, living nightmare. Each death is followed by resurrection, with no rest and no escape. Kindred's goal is purely psychological. He wants to break not just Peter's body, but his spirit. He torments Peter with the idea that his moral code is a flaw, and that everyone who gets close to him suffers for it. The violence is some of the most graphic in any Spider-Man comic, but the real horror is the psychological weight of it all. Peter is completely alone, trapped by a demon wearing his best friend's face, who uses every tragedy in Peter's life as a weapon against him. Even after the ordeal is over, Peter is left utterly broken. Last Remains stands as the ultimate nightmare fuel, because it's not about an external monster. It's a slow, methodical deconstruction of a hero, a relentless descent into a personalized hell that makes it, for our money, the darkest Spider-Man story ever told. Conclusion. And there you have it. 5 stories that prove Spider-Man's history is far more terrifying than most people realize. From zombified hunger and skin-crawling body horror to brutal mutilation and soul-crushing torture, these comics push the friendly neighborhood hero to his absolute limits. They remind us that for a hero defined by loss and responsibility, true horror is always just around the corner. But they also show us that his greatest strength isn't just his power, but his ability to endure the unimaginable and still, somehow, come out the other side as a symbol of hope. What do you think? Did we miss a story that gave you nightmares? Let us know what you think is the scariest Spider-Man moment ever in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you. If you enjoyed this darker look at Marvel, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the weird and wonderful world of comics. Thanks for watching.